the India's Inc. growth story. We are speaking at a time when Indian economy is booming, when there are manufacturing sector target, contribution to GDP target is to take up to 25%. So without wasting much time, let me quickly introduce you to my panel. I have with me Mr. Shashank Shrivastav, who is Senior Executive Director, Maruti Suzuki. I have with me Mr. Lovkesh Kapoor, who is the MD and Chairman of Ananta Capital. So Mr. Shrivastav, let me begin by asking you the first important question. So do you think whether the India Inc. animal spirit is back?
Absolutely. And I think we just heard the minister talking about the next decade and how the last decade has been so good and its next decade is expected to be even better. And from an auto perspective, I can tell you that we have a very bullish view of the Indian auto industry, both because the motorization of India has actually just started. We are at around 30 per thousand population in terms of motorization, and it's expected to go up drastically. For passenger vehicles, we are at around 4 million. We should be in this year, expected to be around 6 million passenger vehicles by 2030. So I think there is definitely, and you talked about the increase from 17% to 25%.
Yes.
That's a 8% increase. 5% is expected to come from auto. So I can tell you, as far as auto is concerned, and in fact, generally speaking, it's certainly certain that animal spirits are back.
So over to you, Mr. Kapoor. What do you think, whether the animal spirits in India Inc. is back?
So I'll give you from our experience of running Ananta Capital, which is a buyout fund focused on buying out consumer product companies. And we have investments in varied consumer sectors of India. And absolutely yes, the animal spirits are back. Can they be better? My sense is yes. If the current government gets a resounding mandate, maybe next year, the animal spirits will be even better. And we've seen that in the last few years in India, across sectors. So Shashank spoke about auto. I'll talk about multiple other consumer sectors. The optimism in the industry is actually phenomenal. And we've been in this industry for the last many years now. The last few years, the optimism when it comes to capital deployment, looking into the future, not let's say the next few quarters, next few months. It's about how can India play a significantly larger global role in the consumer space, specifically with respect to our fund. And so absolutely yes, animal spirits are back. Can they be better? My sense is yes, they can be even better.
Sure. So coming to you, Mr. Shrivastav, since you are one of the biggest player in auto sector and manufacturing sector as well, my question to you, we know that Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman from various platforms have said that to drive India's GDP growth, private capex has to be ramped up. So how do you assess the private capex as of now, and what is your outlook going forward? We can specifically talk about Maruti Suzuki as well.
Yeah, of course, as I just mentioned, for the auto industry, the plan is to take from the contribution of about 7.5%, 7.7% of GDP to in excess of 12%. And that obviously means that there has to be a large expenditure on capital in order to promote the growth, which I said will be in passenger vehicles reaching 6 million. And Maruti Suzuki has already announced we are going to invest 1.25 trillion rupees in the next few years, including creating capacities like in Kharkhoda. We will be creating another plant which we are in the process of shortlisting the actual site. So where in Kharkhoda the capacity which we are creating is 1 million vehicles annually. This is the largest single place of, it is the largest capacity anywhere in the world. And that is actually the state of India is the third largest passenger vehicle industry in the world. And it's going to get even bigger and I'll give you just a flavor of the enormity of the growth that should come from manufacturing, especially in automobile. Maruti Suzuki, we should be doing about 2 million plus this year. Last year we missed it by just a few numbers. So this journey took 40 years. But we are planning 4 million by 2030. So the next 2 million is going to come in just 6 to 7 years. That's the scale of and the enormity of growth that we see in the manufacturing sector. And definitely, as far as capex is concerned, you will see a huge growth.
And Mr. Kapoor, how do you assess the outlook for private capex going forward?
So capital expenditure, if you see by its nature, is something where entrepreneurs, companies commit to something which is going to reap rewards over a period of time. It is unlike revenue expenditure where you spend today, you get immediate gratification. The only thing an entrepreneur, or I would say from various things they look at, one of the most important is predictability, stability. And that stability has to be of the political environment, economic environment, social environment. And again, the first question you asked, my sense is there has rarely been a better time in terms of having economic predictability, social predictability, political predictability. In terms of some numbers that why and how will corporate India commit to private capex, and because this has been one of the issues in the last 5 years. If you see economic trends, macroeconomic factors, last few years GDP growth has mostly been coming from government expenditure. Private expenditure has been at a macro level lagging. Some of the industries obviously have been doing well, some of them have not been doing well. But largely speaking, it is the government sector which has been committing to capex. Now what has happened is that the corporate debt to GDP ratio of India Inc. as a whole is, my sense is at a 2-decade low. So maybe 17 years back we had the metric of corporate debt to GDP which was at this point. On the other hand, the balance sheet of banks has never been healthier in the last many years.
Right.
So on one side you have demand, which is that the balance sheet of companies have enough scope now to commit to capex. And on the other side, the supply of capital, which is banks, equity markets, capital markets, are kind of roaring to provide that capital. So there has never been that better, I would say, mixture of these, of all these individual items to contribute to capex cycle.
So Mr. Shrivastav, let me come to you. We know a lot of work has been done as far as ease of doing business is concerned in India. So since you're one of the largest players, I would like to pose this question in front of you. How do you see progress on ease of doing business, and what more needs to be done?
Absolutely. I think it has improved dramatically, and I think all studies show that. And it's not just one or two actions of the government, but across the board, across all sectors. So it's not just about manufacturing or financing or environment or things like that, but it's across all, and that's why the ease of business obviously has got better. And but I think if you look at manufacturing, what needs to be done apart from ease of business, he has mentioned about the political stability and the economic stable policies. But I think if you look at the return on invested capital, manufacturing in India, it's in many cases less than the cost of capital itself. So you need to increase productivity, which apart from ease of business, productivity means investment in automation, investment in new processes, investment in upskilling, including accessing of capital, which is like roughly 5 times the GVA, and GVA in manufacturing roughly expected $400 billion. That means you could expect about 1.5 trillion investments, so accessing capital, of course promoting localization, and all this is coming through ease of business as a major part, not only in getting clearances, but also in how the whole financial system works, the entire labor system works. So I think yes, the ease of business definitely got better.
And Mr. Kapoor, your take on the progress on ease of doing business?
So absolutely again, and I was just a while back reading about World Bank ease of doing business definition. And you'll be actually surprised to know what constitutes ease of doing business. It is not that you have to be the most innovative economy, the most deepened capital markets. It is actually the speed at which a company can get incorporated, the speed at which electricity license can be taken by a factory, the ease with which construction can be allowed, And these are all extremely basic things,
Right.
and which is what the government of today has done in the last few years. And I think India used to be about 170 odd on the list. We are, I think, about 60, 65 right now. The aim of the Prime Minister is to come in the top 50. Definitely it has gone up significantly, and there is no other sector, mini sector within the economy than startups to validate this point. Because startups is all about speed. How fast can you get off the ground? How fast can you get to production, which can be, let's say, production of XYZ in industries. The speed at which startups have come in India, the speed at which they have grown. I was hearing some people that Aman had a fantastic session on boat, which is a phenomenal Make in India story. And it is again a testimony of 2 years of doing business, and which has significantly improved, I can tell you from personal experience.
And the next question that I want to ask you, Mr. Shrivastav, is that we know that India Inc.'s profitability in Q1 and Q2 has been quite robust. So how do you see the profitable trajectory going forward? And do you think that there are any challenges in front of the profitability?
Yes, I just mentioned the return on capital. Of course, that's related to overall profitability, and it's been going up for business. And I think from here it should go up even more. Not just because a large number of companies in the manufacturing sector are still below the cost of capital in terms of return, but also I expect going forward the type of economy that we are developing, especially the sunrise industries where we have a major push now in every industry, the automation that we are doing, the skilling that we are doing, the investments in analytics and so on and so forth. I think the productivity will go up. And I'm not talking just productivity of capital, but also productivity of labor. By the way, productivity of labor in India is 1/2 of what say even in Indonesia, right. 1/4 of what's in China or Korea, and in electronics 1/30th of what's there in Korea. So there is a huge upside which we can, and I think we have set up a platform really good, and I would expect this ratio to go up substantially.
And how do you see a profitable trajectory going forward?
So profitability, I agree with Shashank, but I would say it's a bit of a more nuanced issue. So as I was saying, private capex in India has been a little disappointing over the last few years, in the last 3-4 years. And capex investment, looking into the cycle, let's say 10 years in advance, sometimes does not lead to immediate profitability. As you would see, for example, Republic, what Arnab has built. If you're taking a 10-year view of a business, if you're taking a 10-year view of, let's say, auto in Maruti, you may have some years ahead of you which will not be as profitable. The profitability to GDP ratio broadly is about what, 4.5-5% right now?
Right.
You have a sense what is it in US right now? It's maybe 17-18%. Do we want to be where US is in terms of GDP growth? Absolutely not. US is growing at about 2-2.5%. India is growing at about 7.5%. 8, 7-ish kind of range. So when you are pushing so hard on growth, there will come intervals of time when the profitability will not be that high. My sense is that if the capex cycle turns in favor of private capex now, you may see this ratio getting down a little, but over time, definitely profitability ratio to GDP is going to improve.
So due to paucity of time, I would like to come to you and take your closing comments. Mr. Shrivastav, one word that comes to your mind when you envision India Inc. 10 years from now. How do you see India Inc. and from 10 years from now, and one word that strikes your mind?
Khushal.
Okay. And Mr. Kapoor?
So one, I have a wish that if our PM was 10 years younger, it would be fantastic. That next 10 years will be even more fantastic for India. But one word, one phrase which comes to mind is a roaring tiger.
Okay, so we are ending it on a right note. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us at India Economic Summit brought to you by Republic Business. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.